Bam.
This is Dr. Tracy Gapin, and you are watching the Break It Down Show.
I love it. I was looking at our pictures from when we got together back in 2020, right as the COVID thing was happening. And the shirt I'm wearing is the same shirt I happened to, just by chance, wear today in the images. How fun is that?
I love it. That's awesome. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, likewise. The space that you work in, you were like just like a full-fledged urologist for a while. Then you're like, hey, I've got to get in front of this. Science is moving fast in other areas, longevity, performance, that kind of thing. So what has changed in these last, it's hard to even say, like, but it's been 5 years.
Oh my gosh,
a lot changes in this world in 5 years.
5 years, yeah. So when you and I last met, I was still a urologist full-time. I had at that point already recognized the writing was on the wall. You know, I experienced some major health issues of my own several years before you and I met, and that got me on the trajectory of learning, you know, how do I improve my own health? How do I lose all the excess fat I gained, regain my energy and focus? And I recognized that the healthcare system that I was entrenched in doesn't teach you that. It teaches you how to treat disease, illness, symptoms, problems. And so I spent years going back to school. And I think when you and I met, I had really just kind of come out of that transitional period and recognized this entire new world of optimization. And that's when I decided to leave traditional medicine. So when you and I last met, I think I had given my partners my 1 year notice that, look, I'm out of here. I'm no longer going to be shackled in this broken, miserable, disease-focused sick care system. And instead, I'm going to focus on optimization and performance and longevity and, you know, helping high performers be their absolute best again in every area of their life and all this fun stuff. And I tell you, Pete, it's been a whirlwind since I left, and my only regret was waiting so long to do so.
Oh, well, that's good. That means you made a good decision, because it does sound scary. You know, like I know from just my little interaction with you there in your hometown, you know, you've got a club you go to, you got a beautiful young family, you have a practice that at least looks like on the surface that it's pretty dang successful, and yet you see the future. That's scary to make that move, to say, I'm not going to do what doctors are supposed to do. You know, you're supposed to just chill out, sell your practice a little later on, and then, you know, have lived your whole life being a doctor. But you're doing that in a whole new way. That is scary.
It wasn't. And I literally started from scratch. I went from a very lucrative, very busy surgical practice, you know, high quality life, you know, very comfortable living. And I was willing to give it all up for a bigger purpose, to have a bigger impact, to feel like I'm really changing healthcare and making a difference in men's health. And I believe I'm on that path.
Yeah. I've had a couple of health things that have come up and definitely way too much. And I've struggled mightily. You know, I used to not be heavy at all. I was athletic. I did PE all throughout my education. In the Army, I was like, can we run more? You know, can we throw the ball? I loved all that stuff, but my body's a little broken up now. I had my ankle rebuilt, and then I got an infection. And so 2 pretty big leg surgeries that added pounds on, because I just couldn't move around enough.
Yeah.
And I had my eyes redone. I had cataract surgery, you know. But I have got to deal with this paunch, and it's really more than a paunch now, right? I mean, I'm racing towards diabetes. I mean, I guess, right? At some point, I'll lose that fight probably. And I hate to think that. I've been trying to get the VA. This is not a beat up on the VA. They're just my healthcare provider. I've been trying to get the VA to get me on some kind of semaglutide for well over a year now. And I've had to do everything but go get the injections. And I had to start this process to see an endocrinologist before I got sick. And I'm not sick yet, but I'm not getting better.
Yeah.
I had to say, I'll go to Mexico and buy these drugs there. And they're like, fine. Oh, well, you know, and then every time I see the endocrinologist, it's never the same person. And so it's a new plan each time. And Tracy, I'm telling you, like, I want to use my medical system, but they just refuse to give me the help that I need ahead of when I might need it. I don't want to become type 2 diabetic. And I don't know if I will. Maybe I won't. I still need to lose this weight. It's unhealthy.
Yeah. Well, you bring up such a common situation piece. I'm glad we're talking about this. I love that you're willing to be so vulnerable and make it about you, because I think it'll kind of drive this point home. I see so many men just like you who are like on this precipice of, danger with blood sugar control and systemic inflammation, excess weight, obesity, and I'm sure your hormones are not where they need to be, and all that kind of drives cardiovascular risk as well. And it's this complex problem. And what happens is you try to find the easy solution, which ends up being, oh, I hear about this amazing peptide. I'm gonna take semaglutide. I'm gonna lose all this weight, and everything's gonna be great. Yeah. And I'll just caution you that unfortunately it's not quite that simple. And this is why. So semaglutide is a peptide, right? It's a great peptide, and we've been using it for a long time now, and it's really gained attention in the last couple of years for its weight loss benefit. What it does is it helps control cravings, so sugar cravings. It makes you feel full quicker so that you don't eat as much, and it helps control blood sugar, okay? And that's why people are able to lose weight, because it suppresses appetite. Problem is you can't take it forever. You just, it's not realistic to think you're going to take it forever. It's a good short-term tool when used in more of a comprehensive kind of picture to help you burn fat, lose weight, get energy, and get working out, all that kind of good stuff. What happens time and time again, Pete, and it sucks, but it's true, is that you take semaglutide for 3 months, 6 months, you're going to lose 20 pounds. You're like, yeah, this is awesome. And then you're going to stop it at some point because the well's going to run dry. You can't afford it. It's time to move on. You can't take it forever. And then what happens is, unfortunately, you gain all that weight back, and all the muscle you lost actually typically goes to fat.
Yeah.
And so it's such a sexy, appealing option. I'll just take a bunch of semaglutide.
Right.
The alternative is this. Is my word now is momentum. Okay. You build momentum by doing the following. You fix hormones. And typically it's, we can talk all about testosterone and thyroid and growth hormone and DHEA and vitamin D, nitric oxide, all these hormones. You clean up your gut. Pardon me. And the gut gets damaged from sugar intake, from alcohol, from stress, from poor sleep, from just life. The microbiome gets messed up, and most people suffer with gut issues, don't even realize it. What that does, Pete, is your own body makes semaglutide. There's a cell in your gut, the L cell, it's in the lining of your gut, and actually produces GLP-1. And so your body has its own way of regulating weight and blood sugar and hunger and satiety when you have good, healthy gut. And so rather than me or you taking or me prescribing, someone giving you semaglutide, what's a much more effective approach is you clean up your gut so that now your gut's producing GLP-1 like it's supposed to. You fix your hormones so your metabolism is higher, your energy, your drive is higher. Now you're more motivated, you feel better. You're like, let's kick ass in the gym, let's go. And you're more dedicated to eating healthier foods and going to sleep when you're supposed to instead of sacrificing the quality of your sleep. That all helps drive inflammation down, and it becomes, again, momentum where you're starting to build upon itself. And now you're doing it without a freaking peptide. Peptides are great, and I love them. And you could add, that's like icing on the cake to kind of help speed things up. But by itself, Pete, what happens is unfortunately you end up right back where you are, if not worse, in like 6 months from now. So that's the problem.
Yeah. Well, if I could even get the peptides, and if the VA, here's the other thing: is like the VA, and again, I'm not beating up on the VA; they're just my care provider. I go in and I test for testosterone, and I look on the internet, and I'm like, oh, I don't have enough testosterone, or it's so low. But to the VA, they're like, oh no, that's enough. But it's like at the bottom of like any more lower, we'd have to prescribe it. Like, okay, this is just. But they, and this is what I'm getting after is that big medicine. I hate to say the word big in front of things, but that approach where it's like, oh, you're in the band of normal. Let's not worry about it. Like, no, you have all these other things. Because I love working out, right? My body makes me work out in a different way now because it's beat up and everything. But yeah, for sure. And one of the things for sure that messed my gut up was I had a MSFA infection in my ankle when they fixed it. That's why they had to go back in. And so I was on a PICC line with antibiotics for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to, there's not like a green light, ding, your gut health is normal. So I'm still fighting to try
Yeah.
to balance out
Yeah.
what's supposed to be in there. And so I just look, I'll appreciate your advice on this. I just blindly take a probiotic that I buy at
Yeah.
Costco.
Yeah.
Of course, we eat a lot of vegetables and all these things, and I've tried to add in some extra fermented vegetables, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to me like it's still quite back to normal, and it's been almost a year now.
Yeah, and it's probably not. And you bring up a great point that it's not as simple, unfortunately, as just taking a probiotic. And I always say, just test, just test and find out. So I really on the front end now, like when people ask me, what do you recommend? I say, well, I would test first to find out. Do blood testing, do stool testing, looking at your gut health, do salivary hormone testing, looking at things like cortisol, look at blood sugar control and inflammation, and then you can start to really understand what's messed up. What do I got to fix for me, which is typically different for everyone. Yeah.
Boy, you say cortisol. That's a word right up my alley, because a lot of my PTSD probably stems from a lot of just increased cortisol consumption by my brain. I had so much combat time that I don't know that I don't know that my body has figured out how to tamp that down and not just flood my zone with. I'm not a doctor, you are, but that's part of what makes me crazy when it comes to the PTSD stuff.
It's super tough, and that nervous regulation kind of controls everything. And so this is where I, as a medical doctor in the old days, I would just want to prescribe something to fix it. But now we recognize that a lot of it is more behavioral, lifestyle things that you can do, like vagus nerve stuff and mindfulness, meditation, and breathing exercises, and all this stuff that I tell you, Pete, I used to think it was all woo nonsense, but there's real science behind the power of that in helping it to control the nervous system.
That's exactly right. And the thing that allows me to remain calm is accepting that, hey, I've got this issue. And one of the responses is my body gets flooded with cortisol when I don't need it. And even that, I'm kind of looking through a gauzy lens. I'm like, is that what's happening to me? Maybe, but then I look at all the symptoms and I'm like, well, that certainly seems like me, but again, I don't know. There's a lot. It's like whenever you get sick, it's like, well, do you have a runny nose? You have fever? Yeah. Do you have a sore throat? Do you feel a little dizzy? You feel a little nauseous? And I'm like, well, that's everything. That's all the symptoms. So I don't know if what I'm seeing and believing about my condition is accurate, or if it's, I don't know. It's hard to know, man.
Yeah. And that's why I always suggest testing for everybody, and a lot of people like you obviously have some real clear issues that you want to focus on. So that makes it a little easier. Well, the challenge comes when guys are like, yeah, I'm great. I'm good. I'm fine. I don't have any problems. And it's like, the whole marketing problem unaware kind of population where they think they're fine. And when you do testing, you'll find some real issues that you don't even realize are really affecting your cognitive function, your energy, your drive on a daily basis. So that's why I recommend testing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so that makes a lot of sense. How much of this is just, dude, you're 55 and you have 1,000 combat missions under your belt? Some of this is just laps and miles, right?
That's like the whole concept of aging, that I'm just old, and that it's just kind of supposed to happen. And there are a lot of theories around why we age, but a lot of this is reversible. A lot of this is, we know that hormones decline, especially over the age of 40. Your testosterone and thyroid and DHEA and growth hormone and other hormones plummet. We know that just by correcting those hormones, we can have a massive impact on healing and recovery. We know that, when you help control blood sugar, it's not just you're not just diabetic or not. It's not black or white. It's not yin or yang. It's actually a spectrum. And we know that the better you can control blood sugar every single day, it's going to help actually slow and reverse that process you're talking about. This is why you see guys who are like 80 years old and they're out there actually doing Ironman, and they're suddenly like competing at a level like, how is that possible for their age? It is reversible, and it starts with between the ears, kind of convincing yourself that you're able to do that. And then everything opens up.
You have said the word testing probably 127 times at me already, and I haven't gotten to this yet, but I know this has to have advanced also in these last 5 years. So Where is testing at now? You say you get testing. Well, there's a million tests. What am I asking for when I see my doctor? And can my doctor do this? Or is this, I sound like an infomercial right now, but I really want to know these
Oh,
things.
it's great. Great question. And the answer is unfortunately no. So when you go to like the VA, for example, and I trained when I was in my urology and general surgery training, I spent 2 years in the VA. So I know how broken that system is and the medical charting and all that is. But what's going to happen when you go to the VA or even in the common world and the non-military world, when you go to a primary care doctor, you're going to get the traditional nonsense, worthless labs. And those labs are really are done to find acute problems, illness, like crisis disaster kind of labs. They're looking for a problem that has already occurred. What I'm talking about is, working with a longevity and optimization doctor who is focused on how can we be proactive and preventative and, a precision approach to identifying, I call them blind spots in your health before they become a real problem. So for example, you said, you hope you're not going to become diabetic. There's a lot of stuff that happens before you're formally diabetic that we can do. And that's a lot of testing that most doctors don't look at. There are hormones that most doctors don't check because, your total testosterone is in this ridiculous, stupid range, and so you're fine. And so that's the problem, is that most doctors in our disease-focused world aren't looking at the right tests, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I know just from my own reading, because anybody can read an academic article, the belief that testosterone or estrogen will give you cancer. I'm not saying that it can't happen, but what I'm saying is that threat appears to me, from my layman's eyes, to be way outsized. Like that is not as true as everybody has believed. Is that fair? Do you think? Am I reading those papers right?
Yeah, absolutely. Testosterone, without question, undeniably does not cause cancer.
There it is.
Testosterone replacement therapy, giving testosterone, does not cause cancer. It does not cause heart attacks or strokes or cardiovascular disease or early mortality. We know that men with low testosterone, low T, have a higher risk of developing prostate cancer and a higher risk of having abnormal lipid profile and a higher risk of having abnormal blood sugar and a higher risk of having inflammatory problems and a higher risk of early mortality. Without question, low T correlates with all those problems. When you correct it, we know that it fixes all of that.
Yeah, that's great. When you talk about that, it's already scary to go get tests now, and I'm like, what are they going to find? What's going to be wrong with me? And so actually my last annual, because I was getting my eye fixed, I wasn't able to go get my annual thing. And I think my doctor's great, right? But she's got to get me in and out in a certain amount of time. And so we don't get into anything extra. And so I don't even know how well I'm doing right now today. Look, I feel fine, right? But I guarantee you I could do some work to improve myself. Yeah. So what kind of things do we find with someone who's 45 to 55 years old who, has been going to a regular doctor? What are they missing that the better test kit?
So if you came to see me today, Pete, what we would find, first of all, we do a body comp scan and we look at your lean muscle mass, which is probably lower than you want. You have unfortunately you have higher body fat than you want to have. You probably have elevated visceral fat. Visceral fat is not the fat, not the love handles that you can pinch or see or feel. It's on the inside. And that's important because that visceral fat is closely tied to increased risk of heart disease and cardiovascular disease and early mortality. So unfortunately, body composition scan would show that. We would do a metabolic test where you simply wear a mask for 8 minutes, and that would show us your metabolism is probably lower than we need. And so that gives us some benchmarks on exactly how much you should eat on a daily basis and how much carbs, proteins, and fats you should eat on a daily basis if you want to try to burn fat and lose weight and build muscle. We would do a VO2 max test, which is a cardiopulmonary, a fitness test, basically, tell us how in shape you are. We would do a grip test, which is directly tied to longevity and understand where your grip strength is. Then we would do a bunch of blood testing, looking at, in general, kind of 5 different categories. One is cardiovascular health, which is not just LDL, HDL, and total cholesterol. We look at hormones. We look at inflammation, blood sugar, and nutrient levels. Those are kind of the 5 basic general categories we look at. We look at some gut testing, some salivary cortisol hormone testing, food sensitivity testing. We measure nitric oxide. We do a good physical exam. And Pete, all that's going to show some typical issues with all of those, unfortunately.
Right.
What we find is every one of those categories, there are red flags that we find that that I use this as empowering. I know you think it's overwhelming or scary. It's actually
it is scary.
It's empowering because okay, now I know what to fix. Otherwise, it's like you're just like going through life blindly, not really knowing what are the issues and what needs to be fixed.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I know, like, yeah, you're gonna say, yeah, you got a little bit of fatty liver, you got a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and look, my cardiovascular system is probably okay. If I didn't weigh as much as I weigh, I'd probably be running around. I can swim for 2 hours, easy. I can go out and do all that, but I bet I'd do all of it better if I had, if I was healthier. So yeah, it's intimidating, honestly. Being candid about that.
Yeah.
To go and look at that. What does all this stuff cost? Like, I mean, I'm asking for a price today, but like, give me an idea. Like, because it's easy to say I can afford all that.
Yeah. So yeah, straight up. So we have a testing package. It's $3,500 for a massive testing bundle that we do. And what that does, again, helps you find those red flags, those blind spots in your health. And it includes a massive consultation where we go through a report, and that helps you decide and recognize, understand what needs to be fixed. Take it from there and work with us, work with someone else. But at least you kind of have a roadmap now of what are the issues that need to be corrected. And I tie this back to, most guys like you or I or any other high performer, you have goals in life, right? You have your why. You have things that are important to you. You have family, you have relationships, you have, things you want to do in life. And I know that the one thing that's going to get in the way is your health.
Yeah.
And, you look at shit, Bob Harper, he's the trainer on the TV show, The Biggest Loser. And that guy, like, he trains for a living. He's like the epitome of good health. That guy had a heart attack at age 51 that almost killed him. My brother-in-law, John, he dropped dead at age 49. He was the epitome of good health as well. And so it's one of those things where we think we're fine, we think we're healthy, and we're really not. And so I try to get guys to focus on your bigger why and what's the price of not paying attention to your health and making that your biggest priority.
Man, when I was back in the house, I mean, it's one thing to say, I'm going to go get my ankle rebuilt, and I needed it. It was so I'm so thrilled with it, right? But that was a significant recovery to get through that. And then right as I was like, my ankle feels great. I don't have to have a brace on. I can walk around. Bam, the infection hit like a freight train. If I had had a regular job, I would have been fucked. Like, there's no way I could have done all of those things, because I was shut down from basically, let's say, mid-February, because you got to do pre-op and all this kind of stuff, to June 1. I would have been unable to reliably work. Now, look, you can go on disability. How many people can afford that? Right. It's a crazy thing. So yeah, I saw a number, Tracy. I don't know if I'm going to I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like after the age of 62, most Americans no longer have a full healthy year. There's always something going on, and you're always dealing with something. And that's only 7 years away from early, 6.5 years away. It's just not that far. It's just not that far,
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it comes down to, I like to say, a talking point I like to share is your health is either your greatest asset or your worst liability. And why would you not want to make that your biggest priority? Like, what's more important than that? And you think of all the nonsense that, all the crap that we buy, and the clothes and the cars and the travel and the watches and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And what my big mission is to get guys to really prioritize their health and just make sure that there's not a ticking time bomb below the surface.
Man. Yeah. I'm old enough that I've had, and I'll go on stretches of this too, but I've had friends just drop dead. Like, that guy's alive. And then you're like, he died. Like, when he hit by a car. No, it's not hit by a car anymore. He didn't get drunk and go drive somewhere. He just dead. And that's, and that's women too. I mean, and I can go on stretches where I lose a friend a week, sometimes a friend a month, and it's like, wow, what do I got to do? Do I got to go? And have I done all these tests? No. Have I gone out and done like a vein scan to see like how my veins are doing in terms of plaque? No. Have I done a heart scan? No. Have I done a bone density scan? No.
Yeah.
So, I know these things are problems, but I can't seem to pop that bubble and get through.
Yeah. It's a mindset thing.
Okay.
Yeah. And once you make that decision, everything changes from there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What is something like this? And again, I'm not trying to hold you to like, oh, this is this, because you don't know what every person needs, but what's a reasonable, like, oh, you'll spend this much a month trying to help yourself recover? And then how long does that take? Or is it a complete lifestyle change?
Yeah. I mean, the pricing, it obviously depends on what you're looking for, what you need, but there's so much you can do that costs nothing. So, I mean, like shit, I'm just going to walk through a lot of stuff that we talk about that costs nothing. We talk about breathing exercises. We talk about journaling and mindset work and gratitude and meditation and simply freaking turning off your blue light for 2 hours before you go to bed and prioritizing good quality sleep. We talk about, what are the things you can do before bedtime instead of having blue light, like your phone and your tablet and your iPad. And I'm talking things like reading a book, having sex, doing sauna, great things that you can do in the time before bed. I'm talking about things like fasting, the amazing power of simply one day a week to start, simply fast for 18 hours, simply track how much intake you're eating and recognize, holy shit, I'm eating a lot more carbs than I realized I was. I'm not eating nearly enough protein. I'm not drinking enough water, and I'm not moving at all. I'm sitting on my ass all day and not exercising, not doing any strength training, when simply going out for a walk every day, especially after a meal, going for a walk has amazing power. You can really focus on things like tracking your stress levels with heart rate variability every morning. When you first wake up, spend 2.5 minutes for free scanning your heart rate variability. And now every day you can start to compare what's stressing my system. And you can simply, avoiding alcohol, notice how suddenly you have less stress in your system. And you're never going to burn fat, build muscle when your system is stressed.
Yeah.
You could focus on just eating good quality, real food. Stay away from anything that's in a package, anything that has more than one ingredient. And just that alone, forget keto, carnivore, paleo, Mediterranean, vegan, whatever.
Blue.
So,
yeah.
So my point here is that like everything I just listed is freaking free.
It's free.
And people are the only thing people want to think about, well, how much does it cost? How much does it cost? I just gave you a shitload of stuff you could do for free. But again, it's between the ears that has to happen first. You have to make the decision to be intentional that you want to invest in yourself. Then we can start to layer in. So you're going to buy some testosterone, you're going to buy some basic supplementation kind of thing that can vary depending on what you need, how much you want to do. But that's pennies compared to the mindset work that has to happen first. You have to be willing to commit to changing your life, and that's where it all starts, Pete. Yeah.
And you had told me one time you can't eat enough broccoli. Just eat a lot of broccoli, because broccoli was good. It's one of the things you had said to me at one point. And we eat a lot of vegetables around here. We do pretty good. We try to eat 30 vegetables a week. And I mean just different vegetables, just for variety and everything. And we do a pretty good job of that. But a lot of that stuff you mentioned, I certainly don't do. I can. It's gorgeous where I like you. I live where people vacation. All I've got to do is go for a walk on a lovely trail in a lovely canyon. Yeah. And I love it, but I don't seem to do it. I've got a pool. It's an Olympic grade pool. They had the Olympics there in '84, right? They did the pentathlon, the women's pentathlon there. And I can go swim whenever I want for $1.
Yeah. There you go. But you don't.
But I don't. And I love swimming. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. So this is the whole concept of momentum. And why don't we do what we know we're supposed to do? And my emphasis is really building momentum by creating consistency in your life. Willpower doesn't work. Willpower just doesn't freaking work. It takes established habits and consistency and routine. And so, like, for example, one of the things I love is BJ Fogg. He's a Stanford professor. He wrote the book Tiny Habits. It's very good. I like it better actually than Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is also fantastic. But BJ Fogg talks about creating, it's called ABC. A is an anchor. So what's a behavior, something you do every day that you can tie a behavior to, and then C is celebrate to establish that as a consistent habit. His example in the book is every time he pees, he does 2 push-ups. P2 push-ups, P2 push-ups. It's not that 2 push-ups are going to suddenly make you into an Ironman. What they're going to do is it's going to get you into the habit, the consistency of doing what you're supposed to freaking do every day and overcoming will. It's not willpower. It's that it's consistency. It's simply a matter of when you pee, you do 2 push-ups. And so, for example, for me in the morning, 6 a.m., I have a very strict routine. You know, I hit the coffee machine. My sneakers are right there. I'm going to put on my sneakers. I don't have to go for a walk. I could just put on my sneakers and I'm done. But you know what's going to happen. I put on my sneakers. Now I can go for a walk. My shoes are on. Of course. But that's the hardest step.
Yeah, it is.
So you tie that behavior to an anchor that when you do one thing, it automatically equals the next thing. That is the hardest step in the habit you're trying to establish. And that's how you can start to create some consistency. So that's one thing. Something else I'll point out is it's free to track your intake. You can do it on a piece of paper. You can use an app, Chronometer. I love the app on your phone, Chronometer or MyFitnessPal. Simply track how much you eat on a daily basis. Do 3 days in a row. You'll be shocked at how much you eat. And your goal should be about 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, ideal body weight. So for most men, that's about 180 grams of protein, 160, 180, maybe 200 grams of protein. Call it 180 though. That means 3 meals a day. That means 60 grams of protein per meal is a general target. 60.
Dang.
Most men don't even eat 20.
Yeah.
So instead of the broccoli, what I would do is I would focus first on making sure you get the protein first. You get that 60 grams of protein per meal, and then eat as much fruit or vegetable as you want. Just these little, we're talking like little tweaks that can make such a big difference for you, Pete.
Yeah. 60 grams of protein. I mean, what if I'm just doing a protein per meal? If I'm doing protein shakes, a supplement, those are, let's say 20 to 30 grams, depending on
you could do it. Yeah, you could add those up. So for example, for breakfast, what I'll do, I break my fast between 11 and noon every morning typically. And I'll have a couple of Greek yogurts, low sugar, 2 grams of sugar, Greek yogurt. Each of them have 12 grams of protein. I will have a cottage cheese that will have another 12 grams of protein. I will have a protein shake. I'll put creatine in there as well, typically 5-6 grams of creatine. And I'll have a protein shake that has 25 grams of protein as well. Right there, I've got my 60 grams.
Wow. Yeah.
But that's just intentional. And that's negligible sugar right there as well. There's a little bit of sugar in the yogurt. I put some blueberries and strawberries, that's healthy. That sugar is fine. Right. That's how you can get the protein in. You do that for a month, Pete, you can't help but lose weight. If you eat 60 grams of protein per meal 3 days a week, 3 times a day, you cannot help but lose weight. Yeah.
And if I've got my walking shoes on, all I got to do is go walk as soon as I finish having all that stuff in my face.
There you go.
Yeah, no, that's great. So as simple as just getting up, and when you break your fast, whenever it is, and are you actually doing a intermittent fasting program along with this? Or are you just breaking your fast at noon for a reason?
Yeah. So what I've been fasting for a long time now. For those of you who are not fasting, I would do 1 day a week, maybe 2 days a week at the most. And then maybe over time, gradually work your way up. But otherwise, it's actually a stress to your system, and it may be too much for you. It does raise cortisol if you're not prepared for it. And what it simply is, for me, I just typically, I'm so busy working in the morning. I'm drinking water. I'm drinking coffee as well with no sugar. And then I'll typically break my fast around 11 or noon. I like to eat within a 6-hour window, give or take, 6, 7, 8-hour window at the most on most days. And so when you fast, you want to be sure you fast for at least 16, if not 18 hours when you break it. Otherwise, it's not nearly as effective. Yeah.
Right. Okay, good. Well, this is all, like I said, free stuff, attainable stuff, going for a walk. I mean, if you go for a walk for 30 minutes, it doesn't seem like a lot, but all of a sudden you're walking for 30 minutes and you weren't doing it before. Hot topic this is from our friend Leanne. She said, the black box change in testosterone. So she said to make sure I bring that up with you. Tell me about this.
I love her bringing that up. So we talked a few minutes ago about testosterone and how, there's this misconception that we've had for so long now about testosterone and the risks associated with it. Okay. We were taught, even in urology training, that testosterone causes cancer and testosterone causes heart attacks, heart disease. There were dozen plus studies that showed that testosterone reduces the risk of heart disease, reduces lipids, reduces inflammation, reduces heart disease, and improves survival when you fix it.
Mm-hmm.
However, there was one crappy study, the vegan study. This was about 10 years ago now, 12 years ago, 2013, that told the exact opposite story. They manipulate the raw data, told us exactly what every other study told us, which is that testosterone does not cause heart attacks. And in fact, low testosterone is higher risk for you.
Right.
This study, they manipulate the data to suggest that testosterone causes heart attacks. The FDA jumps on this, or one study, and they put out a black box warning, testosterone causes heart attacks, be careful. What that did was that deprived millions of men of having testosterone fixed because doctors were afraid to prescribe testosterone. Now, testosterone is important. Yeah, it's important for sex, of course. You know, sexual drive, sexual.
I like sex.
Of course, yeah, everyone does, right? It improves sexual performance, helps you build muscle. You know, and people think it's just about sex and muscle, but it's not. Testosterone is such a critically important hormone for cognitive function, for focus, for mental acuity, memory, concentration. It's important for mood and energy. It's important for drive, sense of well-being, feeling like a man. It's important for your metabolism, for burning fat. It's important for blood sugar control. It's an anti-inflammatory. Has all these benefits. And yet men were deprived of it because of this one study, this flawed study that the FDA jumped on. And so what happened recently, the reason we're going down this rabbit hole is all these studies have shown the exact opposite. But no, the FDA had to have a 10-year study of their own. The Traverse trial finally got published in 2024. And what do you know? It told us exactly what we already freaking knew. Right. And that is that testosterone does not cause heart attacks. And so the FDA, February 28th of this year, you'll see it. FDA finally, I can't believe they actually did this. They came out and said, oops, we messed up. My bad. Testosterone is fine.
Yeah. And I guess, please, 10 years?
10 years later, yeah.
Yeah, right. The other thing, I guess, to say, too, is same thing's true for ladies in estrogen. There's that belief that you're going to get sick from it. And I've had friends say their doctor insists that estrogen is bad, but it can't be. It's the same thing. It's
exactly. Yeah. So what happens is men who are morbidly obese, who have hormone problems, inflammation, blood sugar problems, they come in and their testosterone is way down here. And for those of you who are listening, not watching, I'm showing very low testosterone levels, but all your fat is converting all that testosterone into estrogen. So you have this issue where there's an imbalance. We have very high estrogen and very low testosterone. It's an imbalance there. That causes a real problem. However, we know that estrogen is not the enemy. In men, estrogen is not the enemy. We need estrogen for mood, energy, metabolism, cardiovascular benefits that I just talked about with testosterone are probably because of testosterone getting converted into estrogen. And so we had it all wrong for so long. So many guys, especially these guys in the gym, these beefcakes who are trying to build, a bunch of muscle, their bodybuilding competitions, and they're taking all these estrogen blockers. They're blocking that conversion of T to estrogen. But I tell you what, that's what causes sometimes more harm than good, because estrogen is very beneficial for us. I've seen so many guys with low estrogen and they have issues with sexual dysfunction and low libido, and they're depressed and they're crying. And so you have to be careful that it's like a Goldilocks. You want it not too high, not too low.
Yeah. You were bringing in the male side. I was even talking about the female side as well, where, you're going in and getting an examination and your doctor's like, no, you don't need more estrogen. You just have to deal with postmenopausal life.
So there you go. Yeah. So women it's a very different story. Women have suffered with hormone problems because of a horrible study. Again, just like in men, the testosterone, the vegan study.
Yeah.
There was a WHI trial. This was 10 plus years ago now. And what this trial looked at was they were looking at women, perimenopausal women who were given synthetic, keyword, synthetic estrogen and synthetic progesterone. And what they found in these women was an increased incidence of cancer. And therefore, they stopped the trial early and they put up the red flags and the warning signs. Oh, my God, hormones are bad. Do not take estrogen. It's going to kill you. It's going to cause cancer.
Yeah.
So therefore, what happens? Doctors, OBGYNs, gynecologists are now reluctant, refuse to give hormone therapy to women who need estrogen. Now, in women, estrogen is probably definitely more important than in men. Women need testosterone just like men as well, but for women, estrogen, especially around perimenopausal states where levels start plummeting, it causes major issues. Women were deprived of getting estrogen because of this shitty study. And so it takes, if you look at all the other studies, it takes a recognition of the literature to see that there are dozens of studies looking at bioidentical estrogen, not synthetic, but bioidentical estradiol, which is the form of estrogen that our body actually makes, not synthetic, but the bioidentical form. And what do you know? When you replace bioidentical estrogen, risk decreases. No increased risk of cancer, but decreased risk of heart disease, improved blood sugar control, better metabolism, better sex drive, etc. And so it's a very similar parallel. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad we got a chance to talk about that because, you can do this in tandem with the loved one and maybe, you live a little better together as opposed to trying to live better independently. So that's sort of my hope with that. The reality of today, my day-to-day life, what I think is normal, I would say is probably below what my reasonable normal can be. We read all the studies or we read about the news about the studies that say, young boys have way less testosterone than, 60-year-old men. And so there is an environmental, and we've talked about this before on the show.
Yeah.
There's an environmental impact. What is normal supposed to feel like when you're a 55-year-old dude with a kind of a beat up body?
Yeah. So great question. So when testosterone is optimized, when it's normal, and I want to clarify, normal to me is very different than what your doctor will say is normal. When I say normal, I mean optimized, where you want it to be. You have energy. You have boundless energy to perform throughout the day. And then when you get home from work, still be able to enjoy your kids, still be able to go out and exercise and play tennis and do whatever activities you want to do, enjoy the family dinner time, spend time with the kids, have sex at night with your wife, and feel great. Your mind is sharp and focused, and you're able to concentrate and focus and have mental acuity to make quick decisions at work during the day. You are driven. You feel like a man. You feel alive. Like all of these things are critical. And most guys don't even realize how far they've declined when levels are low. Yeah.
No, that's great. So let me see if I can capture a lot of these things that are just simple, free things. So if I can, actually, let's dive into sleep because one of the big things, I have no problem. Actually, I want to go to sleep right now. I'll just lay down and take a little nap. But for a lot of folks, they can't even get to sleep. I take a nap every day. I get a good solid 8 hours. I usually sleep a little less at night, but I get a power nap in the day. And I've always taken naps. So if you are struggling to sleep, what equals the same kind of free steps, the things that you can do to clean up your sleep health?
Yeah. And most people who struggle with sleep issues, it's self-induced, and there are things that you can do to fix it. And so I'm glad you're asking. So I like to point out that in the 2 hours before you go to bed, that's the key time where you need to be preparing your body for sleep. Okay. And what I mean by that is, we talked earlier, no blue light. So we're talking no tablet, no phone, no iPad, no computer. And even TV does emit a little bit of blue light. And so, blue light blocking glasses are great if you're going to watch TV, for example, but I would really avoid the devices for those 2 hours. I would also be sure that you're not eating or drinking in the 2 hours before bedtime, other than if you need a sip of water for your pills or something like that. if you're taking supplements at bedtime, for example. So that's first and foremost is what you should not be doing in those 2 hours before bed. But then the question is, okay, well, what can I do? And those are the 5 things I talk about. I talk about reading, and we're talking about like an actual paper book, not a Kindle. And I also like to emphasize when we talk about reading, I would try to do a non-trade book. Like for me, if I'm reading like one of my longevity medicine science books, it's very dense, it's analytical, there's research citation, and like it requires my mind to be on. I'm talking like a fiction book, or maybe something that you're interested, a hobby and interest, something else that's not to do with your work per se.
Right.
You can journal. Great time in those 2 hours before bed to journal and document, your wins from the day. What are your plans for tomorrow? What are you grateful for? One of the books that I absolutely love, Pete, is Gapin the Gain by Ben Hardy. Dan Sullivan, Ben Hardy. Gapin the Gain talks about how we have this ideal construct in our mind of where we think we should be, where we're supposed to be, how life is supposed to be, whether it's what we should have accomplished or what we think our kids should be doing or how life should be. And that's the gap. So many people live in the gap of wishing things were different, wishing things were better, in a state of suffering or frustration because they haven't achieved what that gain or what that gap is from where they're now to measuring to where they think they should be. The gain, on the other hand, is recognizing and being grateful for it, acknowledging the progress you've made. For example, like you mentioned, the last time you and I spoke was in 2020, and Leanne and I, she's my right hand, we reminisce about how far we have come in just a very short time, and how I've transformed my health, I've transformed my life, I've transformed my business. I'm a different person from a mindset perspective than I can even imagine I could have been back then. And so that's the gain perspective. And that's when you focus on the gain, that's when you win and you have a very different mindset. So I'm talking about all this in the journaling part of it, because this is the time to do it. Those 2 hours before bed, to document your wins, document what you're grateful for, document gratitude, recognize how far you've come. And then the third part now is meditation, mindfulness practices. And I used to think this was nonsense. I was like, this is BS, whatever. But it's powerful and it works, and it helps turn off cortisol, the stress hormone we talked about. It helps turn our mind off and helps prepare our mind and body for sleep. And the best time to do that is in those 2 hours before bed. So if you've not meditated before, if you think it's weird or don't know how to do it, you can get an app like Headspace or Calm, or there are a lot of other great apps out there that you, or just simply sit on a chair or close your eyes. If you need to listen to some piano music or something quiet, you can, but just think about nothing. And it's such a grounding, peaceful, powerful thing to do before bed to get your body prepared for sleep. So that's 3. Reading, journaling, mindfulness, meditation. The 4th is sauna. A great time to do sauna is in those 2 hours before bed. You can get one. We have one in our bedroom. It's a portable one. You can put it on the ground and lay in it. And 20 minutes in the sauna, you'll sweat your ass off and then go shower. And it's an amazing experience. That's definitely calming for you as well.
Red light? Is that red light sauna, or does it matter?
You can do it with infrared or not. Ours has infrared on it, but it doesn't have to. I think red light is great. Infrared is great, but you don't have to necessarily. No.
Okay.
Benefits of sauna just by itself.
Right.
And then the 5th one is sex. People don't realize how powerful sex is for calming our body and mind and getting you prepared for sleep. And so those are 5 things that you can do instead of the blue light, instead of the food and water for those 2 hours. And I guarantee you, just that alone, again, all that's free other than having to invest in a sauna.
Right.
And those are great things you can do to help improve the sleep quality. And we're not talking about peptides, hormone supplements. We're talking about things you can do. Yeah.
And heck, the funny trope is that like a dude has sex and poop out afterwards. And so let that be a thing. Yeah. I remember when Dr. Ruth was so great at all this stuff. She's like, of course you have time to give your partner a hand job. And you're like, oh yeah, I guess I do. Like, come on, let's not make this hard. Let's actually enjoy it. I we got a hoop in the backyard. I never shoot hoops on it. I love shooting hoops, just like bouncing around, throwing some up. I love doing that. And I could have a whole phone conversation while I did that instead of, and I used to, but I got out of that habit. So I'm gonna bring that in. So let's see here. I'm gonna try something. So if I was going to do anything, I'm going to do more walking, do more shooting my hoops. I've got a rowing machine in the backyard, all those things. I'm going to get to the pool. I'm going to try to jam 60 grams of protein in my face 3 times a day when I'm eating. I'm going to try to eat in a shorter window, not eat for 12 hours. And I'm
16, at least 16. If you're going to fast, it's at least 16. Otherwise, don't do anything. Yeah. 16
hours. Okay. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to, because these are free, I'm going to write down what I eat. I'm going to journal. I'm going to, let's see, what else here? You said walk, journal, eat protein. And I'm going to do those things for a little bit of time. And then maybe there's a couple things I missed, but these are simple, just small changes. And if I changed one of those a week, that's going to take me 2 months and all those things cooking. And all of a sudden, my default will be higher. How did I do?
I love it. And then get tested.
Did you hear me sneak a doo-doo in on you?
What's that?
I snuck a doo-doo in on you.
You said doo-doo.
Yeah. But yeah, so, and these are all attainable things that, and like you said, they're all free.
That's right.
It's also nice to go out and walk, for an hour or whatever, push-ups or planks or whatever it is, just adding these good habits in. Because one thing I know for sure is that being on your phone, watching screens, we know that's bad for you. So if we can get that to come down and do some of these other things, and just grabbing a little book. This is not a very exciting book. Oh no, it's raining. But you just throw a book in front of your face. This is actually the wrong kind of book. You said don't do workbooks, and this is a workbook. But reading, yeah, it's great. It's a meditation in and of itself, I think, at least, because I'll read something and stew on it. So what else do we need to cover before we wrap this thing up? By the way, everybody, I put the links for the books that Tracy mentioned, and then of course the Gapin Institute, which is right down there. Yep. What else do we need to mention before we wrap this thing up?
I have some gifts for your listener. If you'll go to gapininstitute.com/launch, that's LAUNCH, because our program is called Peak Launch. But if you go to gapininstitute.com/launch, I have a number of gifts that I've created specifically for the listeners. And it's, again, my gift to those listening. First is I have a high performance health handbook. These are 15 strategies and tactics that you can start employing, leveraging today from home for free. Help optimize your health so you can have more energy, focus, and drive. Again, 15 strategies and tactics, high performance health handbook. There's a copy of my ultimate peptide guide, Pete. A lot of guys ask about peptides, and so I constructed this advanced scientific guide on all the latest and greatest peptides to understand which ones might be great for you. There's a copy of my TED Talk I gave a couple years ago. There's a copy of my best-selling book, Mel 2.0. I have a complimentary digital copy there and some other goodies as well. Just go to gapininstitute.com/launch.
Right there, you guys, right there. Oh, wait, hold on. It says start there. Wait, I'll make the /launch thing. Hey, I typed that in and it went.
Yeah, it'll redirect, but launch is easier for the listener.
Yeah. I'll just put this in here. So the link is the same, everybody, but
there you go.
Type in this and you'll get there. So either way, and I'll put that on the screen. Whew, that's a dense hour full of stuff. I've got simple, very small, very attainable goals to go do. I mean, if I went out and swim 200 miles in the next, I don't know, let's say between now and the end of the year, I'm going to feel better. I love it. For me, when I swim, it is a meditation. It's impossible for me to feel worse if I swim a mile and a half, 2 miles. It's impossible. I come out and I feel great. I've meditated. And here's the other thing is I'll say I'll swim a mile or 2 miles. Often I don't even count laps. I'm just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then at some point I'm like, I got to get out of this pool pretty soon. And then I do. And Tracy, I feel great. And it's the hardest part is there's this bubble around the pool that I can't seem to get through it, right? And just get in my car and drive. So I've got to solve that puzzle. But that's a Pete problem because I have to want to have a healthier body, healthier mind, healthier soul.
It's a very common problem because just life gets in the way and you'd rather prepare for the next podcast or do something else than actually do that because you think you're being more productive. But that actually sets you up more for the long term when you have that consistency. And it's like we all have 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it's how do you spend that time? And when you start to create established, consistent blocks of time for what's important, all the other shit has to fall in the other space. And when you make that a priority, suddenly everything else kind of bubbles down less important than what you prioritize. And so it's really a mindset thing again, to how do I create that momentum?
Yeah. Well, everybody, this is Tracy Gapin. He's fantastic. I dig this dude. I'm so glad that I got a chance to talk to you back on the show again. Everybody go to the link, which is, well, just right there. Go to the GapinInstitute.com/launch, whatever you want to do. You'll find everything you need. Anything before we wrap this up that you want to say to anybody else? Otherwise, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody and then come back to you.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Fun time.
Okay. Stay right there. I'll be right back. Everybody else, I'll see you tomorrow. That's not really